What's going on, everybody? Welcome to JohnnyVTV Live here on this Thursday, February 2nd. My favorite co-host in the world, Mr. Joey Cals. What's up, brother? How are you?
Oh, I'm so happy I'm your favorite. That's great. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. You know why I'm happy today? So we don't have to talk about NFL because Super Bowl is next week, and I'm kind of tired of the WWNFL, if I'm being honest. And what have I been saying for months? I can't wait for college baseball. It's electric. I think everybody really needs to get invested on it because it's one of the most underrated games, I think, in all of any sport in general. And we need somebody really special to help us out here. So we have the director of Prospects Live, Mr. Joe Doyle. Unbelievable stuff. Let's bring him out. How you doing, Joe? Thanks for joining us.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. And thank you for the kind words, by the way. It is electric.
It is, man. And I've been following you for a while, and you have a lot of great interviews, man. I've been
Thank you.
checking out all your interviews with all these guys, and I think it's just great that you're able to get a lot of good stuff out of these young men that a lot of them are going to be future MLB stars. And a lot of people don't know them right now. And, in 5 years, maybe when they become household names, then it's like, oh, well, yeah. Now I know about this guy. Meanwhile, you knew about them long before. So let's get right into here. What's your team to watch in 2023, or teams, plural?
Yeah, so I think my number one team to watch is, so if we're going with the headliners, you got to start with LSU. They're loaded. The lineup is absolutely loaded. They're 4 or 5 starting pitchers deep. They have a bullpen this year. A lot of people thought that with Jacob Berry and Dylan Cruz last year, Cade Doty, that they were going to kind of be the horse. This year, they're twice as good. So I think they're probably going to be the favorite. Tennessee is right there with them, stacked on both sides of the ball, stacked in the bullpen. Both of these teams can go 7 or 8 pitchers deep. But, I don't generally see the best team in the country gelling and winning it every year. So if you were to give me my team would be Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest is underrated offensively. I think they have the role players that in every college sport really seem to kind of make it tick, right? They get the guys that aren't going to be sexy, but they're going to get on base. They're going to steal bases. They're going to play good defense. And they're another team that's like 6 or 7 arms deep. They could lose 2 starting pitchers and still have a top 25, a top 20 rotation in college baseball. So give me Wake.
Wake Forest is interesting. So they have a stud who probably profiles as a top 10 draft pick, and Rhett Lauder. I think, he's got great stuff, but I feel like it's a little bit too generous on some of these mock drafts. So they got him going 9, 10 overall. I feel like he's somebody that I could see going in maybe the 20 to 25 range. He's a first round talent, no doubt. And then you got a guy like Teddy McGraw, who he's not a wild card. He's good, but I think he still has a little bit more to prove to really take that next step and to become an ace in a rotation. Not that I think he's going to surpass a guy like Lauder. Then you got a good offense that's run by a very good head coach. And I think this is their year to take that step. They kind of had a premature exit last season. So I think Wake Forest it's a pretty good little darling team to maybe make a little run late here. So tell me what you think about mine. Super long down the board here. Mississippi State on a bounce back. After they won in 2021, they were ravaged by injuries last year. They lose a guy like Landon Sims, who was going to be one of the top arms taken before the dreaded Tommy John surgery. They completely missed the tournament altogether last year. And now this year they have 26 guys between freshman and sophomore year. And I think, with all this new turnover, that is a wild card. We don't know what to expect. They have the phenom Durangelo Ginchi. I don't know how to say his last name.
Yeah.
Not only is he a switch hitter, but he's a switch pitcher. So I think there's a high variance to Mississippi State. They have a championship pedigree. They've been there before, and it's been very recently. And even in a tough SEC conference, I think they have what it takes to surprise people after they kind of get over a learning curve this year. What do you think about the Bulldogs?
Yeah, I'm with you. Last year was definitely a down year for Mississippi State, but they return a lot of talent. They did lose a lot of talent on the mound. But, bringing Cade Smith back, Cade Smith is a dark horse to go in the first round. You're talking about 6'1" 190-pounder with a 4-seamer that can really miss a lot of bats. And then They bring in Aaron Nixon from Texas, who in 2021 he was draft eligible, and I actually had Aaron Nixon as one of the top 3 sliders in the entire country. He got hurt last year; he was inconsistent. So, if you're looking for a guy that can really kind of put an entire program on his back, maybe be the Saturday guy, watch for Aaron Nixon. And even if he doesn't earn a rotation spot, he's going to be an absolute dynamo out of the bullpen. When you look at Mississippi State, I think so much of it is going to hinge on whether or not Colton Ledbetter can come in. He was a Samford transfer, tooled out of his mind. 6'1", 208 pounds, incredible bat speed. He's going to play center field for him. He's not a great center fielder, but it's the type of guy that can really anchor the middle of a lineup. You put Connor Hudzik around him, Luke Hancock, who's going to be like a 24-year-old first base catcher, really good bat to ball skills. So yeah, I mean, Mississippi State has a lot of pieces. The only thing that has always kind of held me back a little bit from the Mississippi State thing is it's a lot of slug over hit. And I think once you get into Omaha and you start running into these programs like Tennessee and LSU and Wake and Iowa, Florida, you start running into teams that have just immense amounts of elite arms. And when you have so much swing and miss in your lineup, I think it can become susceptible. So that would be my only hesitation. But I mean, Mississippi State probably has 8 to 10 pro players on that roster right now.
And if they even get a couple of their freshmen or sophomores that play up to their potential, then that's when you're really going to have something special. And as we saw last year and years past in the tournament, you got to have a deep bullpen, deep arms. That's a must. You have to have that. And you also have to have a lot of guys that don't strike out, put the ball in play, because we've seen, and even at the major league level, you put the ball in play in October, good things happen. Same thing applies to the College World Series, the regionals, the supers, all that. So if that's what they're going to profile as and that's what they're going to be able to do, then I think this is a team that is worth watching, because those are usually the ones that end up hoisting the trophy at the end. And that's what we saw from Ole Miss last year after they just got hot. And I think they got really fortunate to be on the side of the bracket that they got, facing the definitely weaker part of it. But
yeah. And I'll throw in one more thing. In 2021, when Mississippi State took off, they had the guys that you're talking about. They had the Rowdy Jordans. They had the Tanner Allens. They had the Lane Forsythe, Logan Tanner. Like, they had these guys that put the bat on the ball. And I don't right now see those same types of players in this program, but that's only because they're kind of 18 and 19 years old. It would not surprise me if they, burst onto the scene and surprised people again this year.
100%. So this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I've been thinking of reasons to, pick one side over the other. And I see a lot of characteristic traits in this year's LSU team, like last year's Tennessee team. And so, if you haven't been following, LSU ransacked the draft portal or the transfer portal. They picked up so many key guys. So they lose Jacob Berry in last year's draft. He went 6th overall to the Miami Marlins. I personally thought he was the best hitter in the draft last season. And even though they lose him, they replace him with a guy named Tommy White, a.k.a. Tommy Tanks, transfer from North Carolina, which, by the way, Joe, I had Miami against NC State in the ACC tournament that game with Carson Palmquist on the mound, and Tommy Tanks has 3 home runs in the same spot. I was sick about it, but this team's a wagon this year. Do you think LSU is going to be better than Tennessee?
Man, it's a toss-up, right? So both of these teams have an immense amount of guys that are eligible for the 2023 draft. But I look at LSU, and we said this about LSU like week 1 last year. Where are they going to get their pitching? They're going to score a lot of runs. LSU's going to score a lot of runs. Teams are going to be able to keep up and score 7 or 8 runs with them. But here's the thing, man. This year, they bring in Paul Skeens from Air Force. He's going to be a legitimate ace. You mix in Blake Money, who was really good last year as a young player. You mix in Grant Taylor, who was really good last year as a young player. I mean, Christian Little was a top 3 high school arm in the entire class in 2021, and he ends up going to, I can't even remember where he ended up, Vanderbilt, and then he goes now he's at LSU. And you just, Javon Coleman is still there. Thatcher Hurd is there. I mean, LSU has so many arms that I don't think they're going to have issues like they did last year, shutting people down late in games. And, that's the thing with LSU last year. They would score 8 runs, but they'd lose 13-8. So I don't think that's going to be an issue this year. And so long as they stay healthy and, Tommy White is what we think he is based on what he did last year, and Dylan Cruz doesn't take any step back, they're going to be in really good shape. And I'll tell you the guy to watch out for. The guy to watch out for that nobody is talking about is their shortstop, Jordan Thompson. Really down year last year. He had a really poor year. The numbers and the batted ball data that we're seeing come out of him this spring in scrimmages, I mean, it's incredibly loud, and he was already a very, very good glove. So he has kind of taken himself from, I don't know if this guy has a shot at getting drafted, but the glove is good enough to get like an undrafted free agent deal, to, wow, if he's hitting the ball that hard and he's hitting it with this much consistency, we might be talking about a top 150 pick here. So even guys that we weren't budgeting in at LSU to be big time contributors are suggesting this spring that they're going to be. So yeah, they're loaded.
So I think LSU they're a wagon, right? They have Dylan Cruz, who's profiling as the number 1 overall pick this year. This kid hits piss missiles. He's probably the true 1-5 tool player in the draft if there is only one. And this kid's unbelievable, bro. Like he's outrageous. Tommy Tanks, Trey Morgan's a stud. And I think the pickups of Paul Skeens, I actually do have questions about him. I know he's got the high 90s fastball. He's got the bump and breaking ball, but he's coming from Air Force with a much different competitive balance that coming into an SEC where every team hits, even the low teams, the bad teams are still good. They would still be upper tier in these other conferences. So I think there could be a learning curve early on with Skeens, not saying like he won't have an overall strong body of work. The guy that I'm really interested in seeing is Thatcher Hurd. He was a freshman at UCLA, and he got hurt. I forget if it was a shoulder or an elbow injury last April, and he missed most of his season and ends up transferring to LSU. And I personally think he's probably going to be out of the bullpen this year, at least to start the season, to see what kind of strength and what kind of direction he's got coming out of his arm. But that's another guy I think is going to be really legit, because you got Christian Little, and then you're still going to have Skeens. And I think Blake Money will be able to do some good things. That's the guy that I think needs to have a big step this year, is Blake Money, because he got rocked heading down the stretch.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing about Blake Money is he was kind of the sacrificial lamb, right? Like he was the only guy that they really had working long-ish innings that had decent stuff. They had a couple of other relievers that were interesting, but you can only use relievers so much. So Hurd was a back injury last year, and a lot of it was cautious that they just decided not to pitch him. Everything that I've heard is that he's going to start in the weekend rotation this year. And the only thing, first of all, you nailed it. I think Thatcher Hurd, we've got Thatcher Hurd a top 5 pick right now in 2024. Like the kid is electric. He was electric in high school, and his stuff is really ticking up. The thing about Skeens, for me personally, watching him, is I think on the mound, he's really going to flourish. He didn't walk anybody at Air Force. He was really good on the Cape, which is against the best, and on Team USA, which is against the best hitters in the country. But I'm not sure if the bat is going to translate to the SEC. That would be my only thing. I'm not sure whether or not he's going to be the two-way offensive threat that a lot of people think he is. He's going to be a horse on the mound. He's going to pitch long innings. I'm just not sure if he's going to be this, all-American bat that some people kind of are bucketing him in as.
That's a fair point. I think Christian Little, though, is the guy he's going to have a huge year. And I was kind of upset to see him go from Vandy, because he was probably the best or even the second best pitcher, front to back in that rotation. And I think him coming to LSU just really solidifies that. And I think if you look at it last year, where LSU, and I was saying this all year, I was like, their offense is unbelievable. If their pitching could even come halfway close, and they got into that bloodbath with Southern Miss in the regionals, and they almost won it, with their best pitcher being probably Mikhail Hilliard. And, they had some good guys in the pen. Paul Gervais, I think he got drafted by the Mets.
Yeah.
And Ty Floyd, I'm a fan of. I think Ty Floyd is very solid. And Now you just look how deep they are, and they really do, on paper, have what it takes to make a run. But like their opponent in the SEC, Tennessee, we've seen just because your team is loaded and you win 51 games doesn't mean anything. It's all about what happens, who you match up with when it comes tournament time. And that's really what I worry about with LSU. They're getting a lot of hype right now. And sure, they could win 45, 50 games, but does that mean they're going to translate to July or June, July? Yeah, like to win this tournament. That's why I think Tennessee actually has the edge. In my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, I said this last year, no team in the entire college baseball world has 4 number ones. And that's what they had. And they lose Blade Tidwell, but they still have 3 number ones. Name me a team that's got 3 better weekend pitchers than the Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah, I don't think you can. And, here's the one thing that I would say about Tennessee, that LSU has a slight edge. LSU is a little bit older on the mound, and I think that experience could go a long ways. Like, you look at what Tennessee is going to run out there. Chase Doyle is draft eligible, 3rd-year guy, only the 2nd year in the SEC. I don't think anyone has any concerns about him posting monster numbers. Best college pitcher I've seen since I've been doing this. They've got Seth Halverson, who's going to be throwing 100 out of the bullpen. They've got Jake Bimby, who's going to be throwing big numbers from the left-handed side out of the bullpen. And then here's what I would say, though. Like with Tennessee, the big thing is so much of their talent is like 19 years old, 20 years old. Like Chase Burns, 2nd year in the SEC, just a baby, 19 years old. We'll see. We have him a top 5 pick in 2024, so it's not like this guy's mincemeat. He's up to 99. The guy's electric, but he's on the younger side. Wyatt Evans is a left-handed pitcher that's like 6'7" out of Tennessee. On the younger side, we have him a 1st-round pick in 2024. Drew Beam, another guy up to 96. He's a 2024. So Hunter Sloop is another one. Like, they have a lot of guys that are going to be there. Tennessee could be unbeatable in 2024. But in terms of 2023, my only fear would be they don't have like that senior anchor, the guys that have been there for 5 years, at least in spades, that I think you tend to see more and more of from national champions. So LSU has them in that regard, but Tennessee, like pure arm talent alone, I think Tennessee gets the nod on pure arm talent alone, just inexperience.
I mean, you got a guy like Maui Ahuna who should be stepping up into the maiden leadership role there. And even though he wasn't a mainstay in the lineup, he did get a good amount as Blake Burke. Like if I could pick a guy, and I think he'd probably be a good long shot to win SEC Player of the Year, it would be Blake Burke. He had 14 home runs and well under 100 at bats. I think this guy, realistically, if he gets a full season of at bats in his spot, realistically could be close to 30 home runs. He could be threatening Hispanic Titanic's number from last year, which he surpassed Chris Bryant for the best offensive season in college baseball history. So I think a guy like Blake Burke is going to be carrying this lineup from a production standpoint as well as Ahuna, but leadership-wise, I feel like Ahuna is going to step in and be the voice, at least for the younger guys. And a guy like Chase Doyle, dude, I think he really is the best pitching prospect we've seen since Garrett Cole. All the hype that Steven Strasburg got 12, 13 years ago, whatever it was, that's what this guy should be getting. I think this guy is by far the best pitching prospect. To me, he profiles as a future ace of his staff. He's going to win 3-4 Cy Youngs if he stays healthy. I'm that confident in him. I can't wait for him to get called up into the major leagues where I can just hammer him for Rookie of the Year, because this kid is so legit that I think people really don't understand what they're watching if you're not a person that pays attention to college baseball.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the one thing about Doyle that people probably are underselling is just how polished he is. I mean, he doesn't walk anybody. He's a 3-pitch, 4-pitch guy. Every single pitch projects above average or better. He's a low launch guy, so the ball's really sneaking up on hitters. I mean, I don't know. This might be a plus fastball, a double plus slider, a plus curveball, and his split change has come a long ways. It could be an above average pitch. You mix that in with, plus ability to throw pitches, to throw strikes. And I really don't know what more he's going to have to show to big league teams. He's going to be one of the few college arms that, we'll see who drafts him and we'll see what position they're in terms of like a competitive window. But I don't say this often, like Chase Dollander has at least a decent shot of pitching in the big leagues the second half of 2024 if a team wants to be aggressive with him. The stuff is just that advanced. So, yeah, I agree with everything you said.
I think this kid is so pro ready, and so he gets drafted in 2023. I think obviously you finish out the rookie ball, the A ball, all of that, and the rest of the summer in 23 later this year. 24, I highly doubt they would have him up ready, but I realistically could see him being called up in July or August, get some experience, and then by 2025. This kid is ready to go, opening day roster, especially if he gets drafted to either Pittsburgh or Washington if he goes one or
Texas.
two.
I mean, if he ends up in Texas with what their window looks like, with all of the money they've spent on aging players, Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, some of these other guys that they've brought in, I doubt he makes it all the way to Texas in the draft, but I would not be surprised at all if he's there for a competitive run in 2024.
I agree. We're going to touch more on the draft here. I don't want to get sidetracked. Players to watch in 23. So we talked about teams. Is there anybody specifically maybe that we're not talking about that we need to keep our eyes on, maybe not just for this year, but also for next year as well?
Yeah, so I think for 2023, one guy that I'm really watching for as maybe taking the next step is Jacob Wilson at Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon's been a very good program for a very long time, and they're kind of forgotten because they're not a Power 5 school, but he's the son of Jack Wilson. He struck out 7 times last year. Just an unconscious season at Grand Canyon. If he adds power, and I don't even mean a lot, like if he runs into 15 home runs this year in what is a launching pad at Grand Canyon, and all of a sudden people can project him as a potential just average power bat. He's a 6'4" frame. I mean, this is not a small guy. If he hits homers, he's a huge dark horse to be the number 1 pick in the draft, in my opinion. And then the other guy that I'm really watching for, same position, Matt Shaw at Maryland. Powder keg, firecracker, top of the lineup, busted out of the box, sneaky power. He reminds me of what Alex Bregman was to LSU back in 2000, 12, 2013. I'm trying to remember the year, where he just sets the table. He hits for power. He plays shortstop. He's really, fidgety and bouncy on the dirt. Those two guys, if we're speaking just in terms of, I don't know if you're specifically asking in terms of the draft, but those two guys are two of my dark horses to win NCAA Player of the Year. And anytime you have the best player in the country on your team, the Golden Spikes winner, you have a chance to go deep in Omaha because you need someone carrying the team.
That's a fair point. So for me, one of the guys that I've really took a shine to, and I watched him last year, and I just thought he was incredible. And you're gonna go crazy when you hear this. Vance Honeycutt from North Carolina, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't get enough of this kid. He was drawing comps to Trey Turner. He's got power, speed. He could hit. He could field. He's about a 5-tool player as well. And I think, I saw your tweet. So I actually sent out a tweet the beginning of December, just like kind of warming it up. And I like to kind of educate my followers on college baseball because most of them don't really know anything. And Vance Honeycutt to me was the guy that I had my eye on for this year. And I was like, all right, when he's eligible in 24, he's probably going to be a top 3 pick. And I said, Chase Burns and Vance Honeycutt were going to be probably 2 of the top 3 picks in that draft class. And I just think this kid Honeycutt, man, he had 25 home runs as a freshman. He batted just under 300, and he OPS over 1,000. He plays 2 different positions. He stole almost 30 stolen bases. Like, this kid is so legit, and that's what he was doing as a freshman. And, like, obviously now he's starting to get the shine, and he's preseason ACC American Player of the or ACC Player of the Year. And I think this kid is just so good, and he's going to be like the next Trey Turner, I think. He's just got such a high ceiling, and I think he's barely scratched it.
Yeah, I mean, we have Vance Honeycutt as the number one player in the 2024 class. I will say, just for the sake of argument, he will really need to cut down the swing and miss because he hit 296 last year, which is very good, but the guy ran almost a 33% strikeout rate. And I don't care if you have 25 homers and 30 stolen bases, which is incredible. Don't get me wrong. Arguably the best player in college baseball last year. At some point, your game regresses to the mean. And I think if you're striking out that much, teams are going to find ways to poke holes in your swing and attack you. So I anticipate that he's going to make a significant improvement this year. I mean, he did it as a true freshman who didn't have a lot of prospect pedigree. Vance Honeycutt was not a highly regarded prospect in terms of like local area circles. He was drafted and decided not to go, but he wasn't this premium elite guy that everyone's saying, oh, how did he make it to North Carolina? So he's a guy that absolutely could single-handedly drag North Carolina to Omaha or at least to the super regionals. And if he cuts the strikeout rate down, 8-9% down to that 23-24% range, and you can start projecting kind of a guy that, gets it down to 20% in 2024, and all of a sudden you're talking about a 360, 500, 730 slash with 30 homers and 30 stolen bases. Yeah, I mean, he's a lot more, way more physical than Trey Turner was at this stage. I think Trey Turner was like 155, 160 pounds when he was drafted. Honeycutt's already 195 pounds, but he has all of those tools and dynamic abilities to change the game everywhere on the field. So you're spot on. Everyone's expecting really big things from this kid.
Yeah, and that's why, like, one of the things I said, like, if you don't know who Vance Honeycutt is, you need to learn, and you're going to find out this year because this kid's the real deal. So, like everybody's got, I think maybe the only player I really don't have any true critiques and things he needs to improve on is Chase Dollander for this year. But I think, Vance Honeycutt, like you said, with the strikeouts, you got to get that down a little bit. But I think as he learns, he's still a young kid. Like you said, a true freshman. So he's going to be a sophomore this year and really get more at-bats under his belt and learn how to put the ball in play a little bit more and cut down on the swing and miss. So the last guy I wanted to talk about, and he had an outstanding year as well last year, and he's a Jersey guy. I'm a Jersey guy. Ryan Lasko, man, from Rutgers. This kid was an absolute stallion last year. 27 taters, 81 RBIs with a 304 average. For a Rutgers team that really looks like they have a shot to sneak up on some people this year. And I think this kid, Ryan Lasko, if he has a repeat of 2022, he might find himself in the top 10 this year.
Could not agree more. We just finished an interview with Lasko maybe 3 weeks ago. Absolutely blown away by his makeup. One of the nicest kids you'll ever speak to. One of the most humble kids you'll ever speak to. Small beginnings, Jersey through and through. I mean, he hit 350 last year, like you were saying. 16 taters, 13 stolen bases, like you were saying. I mean, you hit on everything. Absolutely beautiful pro-ready swing right now. Good swing decisions, good exit velos. I think if you're poking holes at him, and this is just from a scouting perspective, he's not the biggest guy in the world, only 6 feet tall, 190 pounds. So you kind of wonder, like, where does the frame go from here? How much more physical, how much more impact can he add? But if he shows improved strength, bigger impact, if he can really carry that Rutgers program and all of the sudden, run into a 20 homer and 15 stolen base season, Ryan Lasko, especially as a lefty, is a kid that could absolutely make his way up into the top 10 picks because he's polished. And, there's a lot of money in safety. And if you think Ryan Lasko can eventually be a 270 hitter who hits 18 to 22 home runs at the big league level, that's a solid big league regular who can play left field for any team for 10 years. So I could not agree more. I think he's a huge, huge sleeper this year.
And you know what I think people forget about, and this doesn't really impact you in football or baseball or any other sport or basketball in any other sport. He plays in Rutgers. That's in New Jersey. He plays in the Northeast. These teams that play in the cold weather have a significant disadvantage. If Lasko was playing at, let's say, let's say he's playing at Texas, where it's a lot warmer weather, we might see a little bit more out of him as well. Because, these guys are starting the season in 2 weeks, and February 16th in New Jersey is probably going to be in the 30s or the 40s, where if you're going down south, it's probably in the low 60s. So there's a huge weather advantage. And, it's really tough playing baseball in cold weather. And if you haven't done it, then you don't really understand it. But the guys that have, somebody like Lasco, having an appreciation for him and what he's done in not the best of circumstances. So it's just definitely admirable. And I can't wait to see what this kid does this year, especially as a fellow Jersey guy. I always got to root for those guys.
Yeah. The biggest thing really is training too. I mean, both teams are playing in the cold elements. Both teams are having to deal with the elements in game. But if you're at Florida State, you're at Florida, you're seeing live at-bats in end of November, December, early January. Ryan Lasco and the Rutgers program, they're doing cage work. They're working out in a barracks for 5 months. They're doing all that sort of thing. So yeah, there is a little bit to be said about a cold weather kid who is, in a sense, self-made and not, playing and training and lifting and doing all this development in conditions that are really suitable for anything. So good point.
1,000%. All right, so before we get to our next topic, sign up for Bet Karma to get unlimited access of pristine betting and fantasy analysis and picks. Use betkarma.com/JohnnyVTV today to get all of the good stuff that I'm putting out on there. Let's not forget it. We got college baseball and MLB season. We're here with Joe Doyle. What a stud. We got a little bit more for the guy right here. Joe, give me your true College World Series winner in 2023.
I'm going Wake. Here's the thing, man. Like I was saying, you need a team that has the pieces to win a championship. The table setters. You need the Tommy Hawk. You need the Brock Wilken, who can hit 30 home runs in a year. You need Nick Kurtz, who can hit 30 home runs in a year and steal you 10 bags. Play a good defense in the outfield if you need him. But then you got the Louder. You got Sean Sullivan. You got Josh Hartle, Camden Minacci. You got I'm missing the guys. I mean, they have so many arms out there. Seth Keener. Yeah, so if I'm always going to take pitching over offense, and I think that was kind of made evident last year with LSU. So give me Wake Forest over Tennessee.
That over Tennessee. All right, now we got some action here. Joe, what about you, buddy? You have who you thinking about for the College World Series? We haven't really talked to you too much today. So do you have a pick here? You want to throw a little dart on the board?
Based on what you guys have been saying, it seems like LSU is always a wagon, right?
Yeah.
I got friends who graduated from LSU. Maybe I'll just throw the dartboard here in the dark on LSU. Is that fair?
Yeah, dig deep, dude. Yeah, that's fine. Take the favorite one preseason.
Yeah, front running.
Which by the way, so I've been looking at these numbers coming out, and personally, for anybody betting, I think it's way too early to start betting on College World Series futures. There's nothing else. They don't really offer any markets. And while I've been intrigued, Mississippi State is 60-1, Southern Miss is 75-1. I think that's appealing. I think the best bet is to probably wait until late April, early May, once you kind of see what teams are dealing with. And then, of course, it always comes down to the matchups. It doesn't matter how good you are. I think if Tennessee played anybody else, not named Notre Dame, with their experience and their pitching, I think they run through everybody and get to the finals and win it. And I think if a team I was huge on all year, if Campbell didn't play in the same regional as Tennessee, they had a really good chance to make it to Omaha.
That team was loaded.
That team is loaded. And I was a huge guy at Thomas Harrington, love Thomas Harrington. I really like Cade Cooler. I think he might be able to sneak into the top 20 this year if he has a big season, because these guys at Campbell, they have a great program, dude. They really do.
Campbell's loaded every single year. They're well coached. They recruit well. They develop well. They are sneaky on offense. And this year, I mean, they've got 4 or 5 pro arms. They've always got arms. They've got a lefty out of the bullpen right now named, I think, Daniel Brooks. 100 miles an hour from the left side. Doesn't necessarily know where it's going yet, but that's the sort of arm that you bet on early on the year to just shut it down at the end of games. So, yeah, I think Campbell is a good one. I tell you what, I don't know what the odds are. It's not something I look into, but if you wanted two dark horses, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Am I getting ahead of myself here on your show?
No, get ahead. Get ahead of yourself.
All right. Two programs that if you're getting good odds, TCU they have so many pitchers that can shut it down. They've got the horses at the top. They've got the offense. They're a really appealing pick for me. And then the ultimate dark horse that I have is Iowa. We have Iowa in our top 20 right now. Another team, the Hawkeyes, they have a glut of pitching, and they've got a couple of big thumpers in the offense. And I tell you, if they can just get a couple of guys to take a step forward and produce in that lineup, Iowa's a good dark horse.
So Iowa, can I say a number or no?
Go ahead.
Iowa's 400-1 right now. Is that 400-1? Yeah, they're plus 40,000. Yeah, they're plus 40,000, so that should be 400-1. And TCU is 50-1. I think that's a good preseason price here. So they had Riley Cornelio last year. I thought it was very solid, but in my opinion, he's more of a 2 than a 1. I feel like he's too inconsistent to be that shutdown Friday night guy every single week. They got arguably a top 10 pick with Taylor at shortstop, and that kid's awesome. He should be one of the guys carrying this offense. So I think TCU is pretty solid. It's the Big 12 is definitely a loaded conference, though. You're gonna have to deal with the guys like Texas Tech, even though they lost to Jace Jung, and Oklahoma, even though they're rebuilding. I still expect Skip Johnson to have that team ready, despite losing some serious firepower in their draft this year. But I think TCU is I think they're a good little sneaker pick this year too, and that's definitely a team I keep my eye on. One team I really want to see succeed, and they were one of my teams to watch last year, was Miami. But I think Miami's just too top heavy. I'm expecting a lot from Yohandy Morales. They lose Jacob Burke and Andrew Walters. I think he's still the best closer in the country. He's got to develop that changeup. That fastball's elite. But I still think Miami, despite being top heavy, is going to get to the regionals. It's just to see if they can capitalize with runners in scoring position, something they did not do well against Ole Miss last year.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with Miami. I think you look at that roster up and down, and you see the talent. You see like Gage Zeal is going to be a first-round pick in their rotation in 2024, but you look at the two arms that you really need. Andrew Walters went, he drafted by the Orioles, went back to Miami in the hopes that he would start and kind of develop that starting pitcher resume. You're right. It might be an elite fastball. The pitch shape is almost perfect. He misses a ton of bats with it. So Andrew Walters is the real deal. Alejandro Rosario is there again. Incredible stuff. Up to 99, but shelled in 2022. Absolutely shelled. And they really need him to pitch up to his arm talent. So, yeah, I think you're dead on. I mean, they've obviously got good electric arms, but they're going to need those guys to absolutely dominate their role. And you are asking a lot from Dom Patelli and CJ Kafis and Yo-Yo Morales to do all of the heavy lifting in a lineup that is otherwise kind of filled with question marks. So, yeah, I like Miami a lot. I like them a lot in 2024, but I do think they're a little overweight in some rankings early on here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to be able to pick up the slack for Carson Palmquist, who got drafted by the Rockies. He was really a delight last year. He was just every time out, you could pretty much count on him for 6 strong innings and, to put Miami in a position to win. But unfortunately, he's gone. But overall, dude, I'd still have to go with Tennessee. I think Tennessee is – I was so heartbroken last year. I was so heartbroken. I really understand how Matt Harvey felt when Adriana Lima dumped him for Julian Edelman. That's the kind of pain that I felt when the Volunteers got bounced. And, I don't know what to do with myself. But I said, even though they lost most of their offense to the draft, along with Blade Tidwell, they were still going to be good. They had this weekend rotation coming back. They have arguably the best pitcher in 15 years, heading this rotation with a guy like Seth Halverson finally maybe healthy, going to command
Hopefully.
the bullpen, possibly even the midweek role. I just think the experience that they learned last year is going to really have them suited for success in 2023. I think as good as LSU is on paper, there's going to be some growing pains. It just happens. Very few times does the number one team win the College World Series. It's bizarre, but that's just how it is. And I think Tennessee is going to end up being better than LSU because that pitching is just so elite, man. You can really count on these guys to shut it down every time out.
Yeah, you do have to wonder how these NIL transfers are going to change how a team can gel together because, you kicked this show off exactly right. LSU hoarded the transfer portal, and they got some sweet NIL deals for a lot of their players. Tennessee is not in that same boat. They brought on Maui Ahuna, who is a very good shortstop out of Kansas. But other than that, they're returning most of their guys. So being able to gel, being able to, call yourself one cohesive unit shouldn't be as big of a hurdle for a team like Tennessee as it might end up being for LSU.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. The other team I want to have my eye on is Florida. I think Florida right now 18-1 on DraftKings. It's actually 11-1 at FanDuel. I can't even believe they put out college baseball numbers. That's not usually something I don't think they do until about May. But Florida's the team that's interesting, right? So they lose Judd Fabian, they lose Sterling Thompson. Now Wyatt Langford profiles as a top 5 pick in this draft, and I'm not surprised because he does have that talent. I'm kind of surprised that, the people doing mock drafts are putting him that high. I feel like I'm surprised that they know who he is. But this kid's a stud. A guy who's like a Blake Burke is Jack Caglianone from Tampa. They have a lot of firepower. Hurston Waldrop transferring over from Southern Miss. I think this team under Kevin O'Sullivan is really going to go far, and I think they're probably going to be in the show this year should, the injuries not sway them like last year it did with Hunter Barco.
Yeah, Florida is a top 4 team for me. Unlimited amounts of pitching. You mentioned Waldrop. Brandon Sproat comes back, 96 to 98. We'll see if the fastball starts missing more bats, but that's super easy arm talent. Philip Abner comes back, who's a really good arm. Pierce Coppola was injured all year last year. He's going to be there. He's a 6'9" lefty that reminds a lot of people of AJ Puck. He could be a top
where
15.
He's from?
Pierce Coppola from New Jersey.
Yeah, he's from
he's a Jersey boy.
Funny. He's from the next town over from me, but obviously he's a lot younger than me. My little cousin knows him really well. So it's actually
Coppola he's a beast too. 6'8", real long levers coming down the mound from a funky low arm slot. He can rush it up to 97. You mentioned Caglianone. He's a monster on the mound, but he's probably a better two-way talent, a better two-way prospect than Paul Skeens. And then, we haven't even mentioned, Yoel Tejeda looks amazing. Yeah. Brandon Neely looks amazing. That's another team that, for a guy like me who hedges his bets on pitching, this team is 7, 8, 9 guys deep, just like I said with Wake. So, Florida has definitely a good case of being the number 1 team when it's all said and done.
And real quick, before we move on to how the 2023 draft is going to unfold, I just want to say how impressed I was with Brandon Sproat last year. Once they lost Hunter Barco, who in my opinion was probably the best pitcher to that point, with Cooper Jerpy in mid-April, and I really thought Barco was going to be the number 1 pitcher taken off the board. I thought their season was done once he went down. I was like, all right, who's going to step in here? And I was like, okay, Sproat, Neely, these guys are solid, 2s and 3s, but I just feel like they're missing that number 1 guy, and it's hard to replace a guy like Barco. Brandon Sproat really surprised me, man. He had this team humming, and once Barco went down, it's like they kind of rallied together and just, made a great effort. And if it wasn't for a weather delay against Oklahoma in the regionals, I think Florida wins that game. And, it was just fantastic to see. And I think this year they're going to come back with a vengeance. They have a loaded roster on both sides of the ball.
Yep, and they had a lot of guys underperform last year that I think they were relying on. I mean, Judd Fabian was boom or bust. Kobe Halter didn't take the step forward that I think a lot of people were wanting. Derek Fabian was not as he didn't perform as well as I think people were hoping. So yeah, I'm totally with you. I think Florida they've got something to prove on the offensive side of the ball, but they're going to have no issues shutting people down. And I'm with you. If that rain delay didn't happen, I do think that's Florida's game to win.
I gave out Oklahoma 60-1 before the tournament started, and I was like, I think Oklahoma can go all the way. So like, I was also really upset.
But that's what I'm talking about. Oklahoma is the perfect example of earlier in the show where I was like, you need that mix of seniors that have been around the block.
Yeah.
Oklahoma was an old team, and they went deep because of their experience. Arkansas, Ole Miss, older teams that got somewhere because they've been there, they've done that. And that's the only thing that I fear with a team like Tennessee that we mentioned earlier.
That's definitely a fair point. I mean, it really is. It's just, I mean, you saw why Notre Dame made it as far as they did.
Yep.
You know, they had age and experience. I like the Wake Forest take, man. I think I'm going to keep my eye on them because I watched them a decent amount last year. I'm not even going to mention it because it could be considered maybe something insider, but I think I watched Wake Forest a good amount last year, and I saw their potential. And I really do like Rhett Lauder. I think that kid is going to be very special, and I think he's going to have a repeat performance. And, you know, if Wake Forest is there at the end, it's really not going to surprise me. But there's a lot of these teams like Texas, Virginia, UCLA, Notre Dame, Louisville, Auburn, like Arizona, Oregon. Like those teams really don't do it for me. Like maybe Oregon will be a little bit of a surprise, but there's just a lot of clump mess that I think is white noise at the end of the day, that they don't have the firepower to withstand against some of these top tier wagons.
Yeah, I mean, you're really a lot of those teams, you're betting on guys accelerating the development curve quicker than you expect. There's a lot of question marks with those teams, but like a team like Oregon, for example, they're like LSU 2022 light. Like they're going to score a ton of runs. I have no idea who's going to pitch for Oregon this year. I mean, they're struggling with injuries right now, but they brought in a ton of really big transfers. So, yeah, I mean, there have been other teams that have just, slugged their way to super regionals, and Oregon could do that. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think so. Two more I want to ask you about. So Florida State getting former Notre Dame coach Link Jarrett. You know, they lose Parker Messick, they lose Bryce Hubbard, and I feel like there's going to be another learning curve there, a little bit of a rebuild, if you will. And I just feel like even in the ACC that is winnable, I just don't think they're going to come that close to being a team that we're going to be talking about standing there at the end.
Yeah, we'll see. I think Florida State has a lot of good pieces in its lineup for 2024. Like, Jamie Ferrer and Jordan Taylor, Cam Smith, James Tibbs. Like, they've got actually quite a few pieces that could end up going pretty high in the 2024 draft. But, again, you are betting on, for the entirety of a season, a team really being led by 19-year-olds. Now, they've got the Baumeisters and the Montgomerys and Crowell. Like, they've clearly got arms that can pitch Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's just, is this a team that's going to score more than 4 or 5 runs a game against good competition? I'm not sure.
And East Carolina, the jungle was the surprise last year. I loved watching Bryson Worrell. I was so upset that he didn't get drafted high. And I obviously could say the reason is because he was 24. He was old. But I mean, dude, if he was 21 years old, that kid's a top 5 pick last year. Bryson Worrell, truth.
East Carolina's got 2 guys that really interest me. Josh Moylan is their first baseman, who had a monstrous true freshman year in 2021. Took a big step back in 2022. They're going to need him to really step back on the accelerator in 2023 to be a force. And then Jacob Starling is their second baseman, outfielder, 5'10". He's just an all-around like banger who can do a little bit of everything. But as is the case with East Carolina every single year, we just kind of have to see how it all unfolds. Here's the thing about East Carolina is you never really know about the stars that they have, the really big contributors, until that year, because they develop so well during the winter. that they just kind of pull all of these, studs out of a hat towards, this time of year. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if East Carolina has another big year, because that's just what they do. But they do seem to lack the firepower that they've had the last 2 seasons. So we'll see. Definitely not a team. Never a team that I'm going to count out.
I would tend to agree. I couldn't believe Texas actually pulled that one out in the Super Regionals last year. But all right, Joe, how does the 2023 draft unfold? Because off air, we were talking about why you think there might be some surprises. So where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, if this is a betting show, right, and odds come out for the number 1 pick, I'm not taking Doyle. I'm not taking Dylan Cruz. I'm not taking the guys that are the headliners. You go back in history, 2020, it was like Emerson Hancock is definitely the number 1 pick. He falls to 6. 2021, it's definitely, I'm trying to remember now, Elijah Green. No, not Elijah Green. That was 2022. It was, no, for 2021. I'm trying to remember who everyone thought was the shoe-in number 1 pick. But anyways, it ends up being Henry Davis, who everyone thought was going to go like in the 20 to 30 range at this time of the year. And then he just, he had an explosive 2021. He gets drafted really early. And then last year, like everyone said, yeah, like Drew Jones, Elijah Green. And then Jackson Holiday, who was projected to be like a sandwich round pick, like, 25 to 35 range, shoots up boards. So I think it's kind of, especially with the way that the signing bonus pool works, if you have the opportunity to sign someone and save some money with the number 1 pick, I think that's the route that teams just go to, like, by default now. Like Adley Rutschman is the last guy where it was like, yeah, give him all the money. So I think, like, if I'm a betting man, and I'm not a betting man, but like Wyatt Langford is really appealing to me with the number 1 pick. I think he makes a lot of sense. It is Pittsburgh. They're a little bit further away on the competition side, but I don't think they'll go high school again, because at some point you got to tell your fans, it's time to put the pedal to the metal. I'm looking at wild cards. Like, give me Wyatt Langford, give me Enrique Bradfield Jr., give me, like I mentioned, Matt Shaw with Maryland. Like, those are the guys that it's like, if I can sign this guy for $6.4 million out of the $8.5 that he's owed, and not give Doyle or Dylan Cruz, $8 million, that's the route that I'm going to go. Now, all of that being said, that's not to say that I don't think Dylan Cruz or Chase Doyle are going to have seasons worthy of being the number 1 pick. They're still probably going to be, odds-on favorites to be top 5 picks. I'm just saying, if I'm making the bet now, I'm choosing someone who's in the teens range, or like in that 8 to 20 range on boards right now, to go number 1. So I think it's going to be college, and I think it's going to be someone we don't expect.
I definitely, I don't see a high school guy getting taken number 1 overall, most likely. And I think a lot of these teams just take the high schoolers because they're young, they're 18, 19, they have room to develop. Whereas you're taking a guy from college, chances are he's 21, 22. And, right or wrong, that's usually the case. But I just don't see that guy in this draft class this year. Last year, there was a lot of high school prospects that it was tough to pass up. But in my opinion, and I understand what you're saying, I just don't know if I see anybody else that's really going to be a serious candidate to be taken over either one of these guys, except for Wyatt Langford. Enrique Bradfield Jr., I said it last year, he's this generation's Carl Crawford. Like, he does not hit home runs. He doesn't have power. But this kid plays gold glove defense in center field. He is probably like the Ricky Henderson of college baseball, stealing bases. He gets on base. He's a strong hitter, over 300. Like, I get it. I just don't think he's got the upside as some of these other guys do. He's more of a high floor kind of guy. So to me, it's only Langford. And, if you're looking at the premium of the shortstop position, which is like something we've seen, Jacob Gonzalez, man, I think he's going to have a strong, solid MLB career. I don't think this guy's the second coming. I think, his numbers are good for college. His defense is definitely questionable. I think he had 6 errors in the College World Series. I don't even know if he's going to be a future shortstop in the majors. Maybe they move him over to second base or something along those lines. But I just don't think Gonzalez is that high of a ceiling. Jacob Wilson's good. I just don't know if he's going to be number 1 overall. I feel like as good as he is, and I'm sure he's going to have a great season, it's just hard for me to envision a team passing up the best pitching prospect in the last 15 years. Like, this is like Andrew Luck. Remember when Andrew Luck was coming out of the draft? He was the can't miss prospect, or even Trevor Lawrence. Like, I feel like that's what it is with Chase D coming out of Tennessee, because, we haven't seen a pitcher with this kind of arsenal, with this kind of polish, coming from a major program who's pitched in big moments before and passed with flying colors. That's why I have a tough time envisioning that it's not going to be him. And, like, even if Dollander's got a down year, I still don't know if teams are going to pass up on him. But, like, if he repeats last year, I just feel like he's got to be the number one pick.
I mean, if he repeats last year, I'm with you. He's my number one prospect in this class. I have him above Cruz. I have him above Langford. He's my number one prospect right now. Here's my thing. Like, there are teams that just philosophically do not take pitchers with the number one pick. It is just, we do not do it. There's too much risk. There's too much risk with Tommy John. There's too much risk with it fizzling out. It's just a philosophical, like, model-driven approach. And, we don't really know how Ben Cherington feels about that. He's certainly gone the pitching route later in the first round. He hasn't really done it too much early on. He's gone college hitter a lot. So here's my thing. Here's my thing with Bradfield. And this is why I think Bradfield is like the dark horse. All we keep hearing is Brian Reynolds has to go. Brian Reynolds has to go. Brian Reynolds has to go. Well, Brian Reynolds is gone in the next 6 to 18 months, which I think everyone would agree he probably is. You're going to need a center fielder. Enrique Bradfield has the potential and the tools to probably move pretty quickly. And I just think I don't think the industry as a whole is recalibrating what these rule changes are going to mean for the value of a speedster and a center fielder. Stolen bases are going to be up. The shift is going to be gone. Guys in the outfield are going to have to go get it, and you're going to have to make more contact to survive in this league. I think the power alone meta, like the Joey Gallos of the world, is going to struggle a little bit even with this meta. So you got to make more contact. If you're providing me a guy that's going to play double plus defense in center field, he's going to steal me 40 bags. He's going to hit 280. He can be a table setter. He's safe. And he's projectable. I mean, we're still talking about like a 6 foot, 1 inch, 170 pound guy who could put on 10 pounds. So, I don't know if the Brian Reynolds piece is a hugely important aspect of this, but the fact that they may be without a center fielder in the next calendar year and that they don't really have anyone coming through the wings to take over for that spot, nobody that they can have like complete confidence in. That's why I just think Bradfield is the dark horse. And I think we'll see with however the game is played, April, May, June, as general managers and analysts start to get a better feel for how the new baseball looks, Bradfield might really shoot up boards.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. I think Bradfield's tremendous. I think Bradfield's going to make a true impact for whichever MLB team drafts him. I certainly expect him to be top 10 this year. Number one to me, I see what you're saying, and I definitely think this guy's got an extremely high floor. He's going to move up through the ranks quick. I just don't know what kind of ceiling he's going to have at the major league level. And I think, if we're going a little bit wild card here, I love Dylan Cruz. I think he's unbelievable. But I also think if there's another 5-tool player in this draft, it is Wyatt Langford to a degree. And I think he could be in play over Cruz. But, to me, it really comes down to, do you want the hitter or the pitcher? And I think in most cases, if this was last year, the Pirates had the number one pick, I could certainly see them passing on a pitcher. But in this case, I just don't know. And let's say maybe they take Cruz or they take Langford number one overall. Number two is going to be the Nationals. Then I think you have to grab him, because what you're going to have in the next few years is Dollander and Cade Cavalli. That 1-2 is going to be elite in 5 years.
Well, and you look at Mike Rizzo's track record the last few years. Brady House fell in his lap. Everyone said Brady House, top 3 pick, fell in his lap, couldn't pass him up. Elijah Green, everyone said top pick. He's going to go number 1, going to go number 2. Falls in his lap, definitely grabs him. If Dylan Cruz or Chase Dollander are there, just being how Mike Rizzo has operated over the last few years, I mean, he is kind of that wait and see and take what falls in his lap type of guy.
This is going to be a great season. And Joe, we really appreciate you taking the time. It was an unreal conversation, and I hope we can stay in touch and keep talking throughout the season. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, man, you can find all my stuff at prospectslive.com. We're going to push out new draft rankings actually on Monday, so look forward to that. And then you can find me on Twitter at Joe Doyle, MILB.
Joe, it was an absolute pleasure, man. Best of luck this season, and I can't wait to read all your stuff. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
You too. Dude, what a great guest, man. I was really excited to have him on. And, I've been reading his stuff for a while, and he just has unreal takes. And I think, it's going to be a great season. I can't wait to read all of his stuff. It's elite. That's just what it is. But my boy, Joey Cows, thank you for taking the time today. And I can't wait to see you, man. We're going to have a good time in Vegas. You're coming to Vegas, aren't you?
I don't know yet. We got to see. It's
sign up for the FSGA, and I'll teach you, and I'll show you some baseball bets. College, we're going to put it on Friday, the 17th.
Sound good? I was going to say, I want to have him back on in the spring so we could talk about prospect rankings, MLB organization, stuff like that. He was really, really good.
Yeah, dude. Like, that kid knows his stuff for sure, man. Like, in and out, he's just top to bottom, bro. Like, that's the kind of guy you need. And, it's definitely somebody that you got to listen to when it comes to the prospects and the betting and all that. So can't wait to hear more of what he has to say. But we got to get out of here. Appreciate your time today, and we'll talk soon, man. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. See you next week.